She's the vice chair, elected member. We have Diana Bristol, public member. Kevin Cloutier, elected member. Omar Farouk, public member. Amber Fournier, elected member. Peggy Judge, public member. Elsa Lee, elected member. Samir Modhera, elected member. Mike Smart, elected member. Dorina Reyes, elected member. Derek Summers, elected member. Henry Wiersma, elected public member. Paul Wilk, public member. And we have Sarah Butson is our facilitator today. And from administration, we have Fazelle Khan, the Registrar and CEO, Amy Stein, Deputy Registrar and Counsel for the college, Fiza Assad, Accounting and Human Resources Specialist, and Carolyn Robertson, Manager of Communications and Executive Office. Now, I'd like to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional lands of the Anishbeg people. The Anishbeg include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as Three Fires Confederation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. I come from Irish ancestry. My parents were born here and they were Irish and English. I will endeavor to carry myself with gratitude and humility as I work, learn, and live in this area. And I just want to say to everyone that you can use this session today for self-directed continuing education hours. And now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sarah Butson. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Stephen. So just a reminder that today there will be a variety of participatory ways for the board to contribute, and to get on the speakers list. We'll encourage folks to raise their virtual hands. We'll also be doing tests for consensus throughout the day. So we'll be asking folks to show us a show of hands, 5 being that they love the decision, 4 being that they can live with it. So that's consensus. 1 being they hate it, and then 2 or 3 means there's some discussion points. We'll also be doing a series of motions where we'll ask folks to physically raise their hand and state their name if they'd like to first or second in a motion, and then we will ask for all who are in approval and then any dissenters. And with that, we are going to begin with our first item on the agenda, and I'm going to let Fazelle Khan, the Registrar and CEO, get us started with the monitoring reports.
Okay, so I have a series of monitoring reports to give this morning. The first one being the investment policy, which is 2-06. So this report covers the period from June 2022 to now. So I'll just kind of hit a few highlights. I'm assuming that everyone's read it. Nothing's really changed as far as investment funds management. We still use an outside advisor at BMO to give us their expertise on our approach to investment. As far as investment parameters goes, I believe, we continue to meet expectations, maintaining liquidity. We keep a ratio about 2.0, ensuring that investment maturities are split throughout the year so that we have funds available to us throughout the year. And as far as the current market goes, while inflation is quite high, we're also benefiting it on our end as far as our yields. So we're typically reinvesting as the GICs mature, and that's in stages throughout the year. So at this point, we've got between 3.10 and 4.75% yield on the current GICs. And everything is invested with major banks, with CDIC insurance. So all of our funds are safe and secure. As far as evaluation of results, there's no less than 4 sets of eyes on our investments. We have myself, the Deputy Registrar, and our accounting and HR specialist looking at it along with our investment advisor. So there's multiple eyes looking at these GICs pretty much every quarter, because that's about when they are maturing in steps. And then as far as reporting goes, audited financials were provided to the board in May, And we also provide quarterly reports to everybody, including the finance committee, which are detailed, and to the board every quarter. So there's a variance report sort of showing where we're at throughout the year against the budget performance. So that is the investment policy monitoring report, and I am happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Fazelle? Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, Fazelle,
Mhm.
these monitoring reports that are all going to come forward today, is it safe to say that they broaden the board's knowledge and what's the words I'm looking for in regards to risk management and under that whole umbrella, that each one of these monitoring reports is another little tool that we use to just keep looking at the risk of the whole scope of the college? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly it. So this is where the board's function is risk assessment, risk monitoring. I, as your delegate, will look at it from operations and report back. And my job is to make sure that I bring this information to the board. These monitoring reports are the board's way of monitoring risk. So I know that sometimes people will say, how are you mitigating risk or observing risk or monitoring risk? These reports, and they're often kind of heavy. We do a lot of them pretty much every quarter. We are doing monitoring reports, and they're peppered throughout the year. And this is the board's way of keeping oversight that operations is operating within the parameters that you've set for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Stephen. And with that, Stephen, it was a great segue to the piece here that I'll read as I sort of guide the conversation around the monitoring reports. But for a reminder, as Fazelle mentioned, the purpose of these boards is, these monitoring reports is to assist the board in assessing and managing risks. And so each of the monitoring reports that we'll be hearing this morning relates to a set of operational boundaries that the board has set for the registrar. And these are the board's risk boundaries that the registrar is required to operate within. And so when the registrar brings forward a monitoring report on an operational boundaries policy, as we've done in the past, the board will be asked two questions. Was the registrar's interpretation of the policy reasonable? And then, did the registrar comply with the policy as reasonably interpreted? And a reminder that the feedback that the board provides will inform the evaluation of the registrar's performance and by consequence, the organization's performance. So let's begin with that first question. Is there any feedback or concerns with the registrar's interpretation of the investment policy? Feedback? No, seeing some shaking heads. Were there any steps taken that anyone was not comfortable with? Okay, not seeing any. Any additional questions, points of clarity required for Fazelle? Yeah, go ahead, Jarina.
I just want to ask, without any intention, just for, general, why do we invest in GICs?
So the biggest, I guess, guiding or motivation for GICs is we want to preserve our capital. So we don't want to have any risk of our capital being lost in any volatile markets, and provide reasonable return on investment after. Because as a regulatory body, we're not in the finance business of leveraging to make money on money. We want to make sure that our reserves are protected for that rainy day and easily accessible without any major penalties. So while we keep money in a high interest savings account, that typically can go as low as 0.5% in low interest yield markets, but it gives us the cash right away. The GICs give probably almost double that or more, and they're preserved and safe. So we find that that's probably the most risk-averse way of conservatively safeguarding our funds and getting a little return on it. So that's why we won't go to like mutual funds or anything like that that could see the capital go away or be locked away for a bit.
That answer your question, Jarina?
Perfect.
Okay, super. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll just do a show of consensus that folks feel comfortable with the interpretation and the steps taken. Okay, seeing most folks. Micah, just didn't see your hand up there. There we go. Okay, so I will pass to Stephen then for a motion.
Okay,
Or motions.
Yes, motions. As Sarah said, we'll be seeking two motions on this particular policy. And the first one is that the board approve that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover? Henry, second?
Amber?
Amber, all in favor? Anyone against? That motion carries. And motion number two is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover?
Kevin?
Kevin, seconder?
Elsa?
Elsa, all in favor? Anyone against? And that motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So we'll move on to the reserves policy monitoring report now, and I will pass back to Fazal Khan to deliver that.
Okay, great. So next up is reserves policy 2-07. So the reserves policy was approved by the board in May of 2018. And I will just go through the major sections and sort of show you how we are hoping to have met that. So the reserve fund, we currently have 4.5 million in the reserves. This amount is further split into restricted and unrestricted funds, which I'll get into in just a moment, and was presented to the board by the auditor in May of 2022. As far as the required reserve goes, the board has directed that we keep about 6 months operational as a contingency. So that's set aside about 1.3 million. We've also decided as a board some time ago to have at least 4 times the maximum award paid out under the RHPA for anyone in connection with allegations of sexual abuse by a registrant. So that 4 times equals about 96,000. I think it's about 21,000 and change. As far as discretionary reserves go, the board will confirm reserve amounts that are sufficient to meet certain requirements. So we go through that and then segregate beyond just the operational into things like strategic plans, unauthorized practice, that type of thing. So we have funds set aside for all of that out of the 4.5 million. As far as uses of reserves go, the board had approved about 443,000 to be used to cover any shortfall in registrant fees. For the second year in a row, we had approved a reduced registration fee to ease the impacts of the pandemic. So the first year we had approved using 817,000 out of our reserves. 2022 was going to be about 443 as a negative budget, and that we were going to dip into the reserves for that. The nice thing is with as Fiz had gone through the variance report yesterday with quite a few cutting of expenses and a bit of unintended or unexpected income from a good crop of student opticians writing the national exam. We're actually probably tracking with a small surplus at the end of this year. As far as investments go, as I just spoken about in the last report, funds have been allocated over several institutions to balance yield versus capital preservation, all of which are CDIC insured. And as I said, yielding between 3.1 and 4.75%. And as far as reporting goes, None of our reserve funds have reached below 10% or the minimum for any of the contingencies, and below 25% for any of the funding of therapy. So we're actually in quite good shape as far as the health of our reserves goes. We were concerned at the beginning of the pandemic about having about a 4 or 5 year window to pay back use of reserves that we were intending with running negative budgets. But we've actually come out in good shape with our reserves intact, and hopefully having a little bit of a small surplus at the end of this year. So it's a good news story for the college's reserve funds. And that is my report on this one.
Okay, thank you, Fazal. So again, these monitoring reports really serve to periodically check in on each of the board's governance policies to make sure that they're achieving the desired results. And again, we will look to those 2 questions. So was the registrar's interpretation of the policy reasonable? And did the registrar comply with the policy as reasonably interpreted? And again, a reminder that the feedback that the board provides will inform both the registrar's performance as well as the organization's. So let's begin with the interpretation of the reserves policy. Any feedback or concerns that anyone wanted to share? Kevin, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Fazal. I'm just curious, are there limits to how much we can have in our reserve funds? Are we capped at any amount by any governmental policies, or are we allowed to stash as much as we can over the years?
We're always, I keep remembering our last chartered accountant firm always warning us about having more money than might seem that a not-for-profit would be operating with. So we're very cognizant of making sure that our reserves all have a function. So that's where we'll talk about the reserves and split them up over different things, especially like strategic plans and all of this. So typically we'll do an analysis of the reserve and kind of make sure that it is not excessive. So we're sort of at that point where there's money stashed away for things, including relocation. We have gotten away from, the board has gotten away from talking about buying a building. And I think in the sort of the regulatory light of things where colleges are being merged in some provinces and things like that, it would probably not be a great idea to be owning a building and figuring out who gets the money afterwards. But at the same time, moves of a building do cost quite a bit. And, you know, I remember our move to this new premises, even with a subsidy from the property managing, was still a $600,000 affair. So we keep enough money on the horizon for these kind of events. So right now we're in a place where the chartered accounting firm indicates that we don't have any issue with CRA or anything as far as what's sitting on reserves. So great question, Kevin.
Good. Thank you. Peggy.
I've noticed it looking at things that because of the virtual meetings, the actual expenditures for the last few years have been less than budgeted, which of course then is putting extra money sitting around. Does that play into this? Because those would have been unexpected. They've got to go into reserve someplace, right? Or are you keeping them separate as operations? How's that being managed without getting us into that kind of trouble of now having too much?
So the thing is, we've had some degree of unexpected income. But for instance, when we were planning 2021, with the fee reduction of 25%, normally we have an operating budget around 3.2 million, and I think we were operating at about 2.4. So we were running with less revenue, but we were also saving expenses with virtual meetings. So the two were quite in line, and the only blip was the number of opticians that may have renewed or applied. So we haven't run any massive surpluses because of the operational savings. So nothing really to catch the eye of the auditing firm.
Was that kind of an issue of you were expecting to not be able to have the extra that you usually have, but you ended up with having it anyway?
So yeah, so we didn't had we run a $3.2 million budget and had the savings that we had, we would have had maybe $1 million surplus. Because we had a shortfall in revenue from our members, and we were operating virtually, we were close. We were able to kind of tuck things in, and with a few other line items that brought in a bit of money, we were still able to surplus a little bit and operate within that reduced budget for that year.
Right. But your expectation going into it was that you would not be able to, correct?
Yeah, we weren't sure, like with the pandemic, we weren't sure when are people going back to work? Are they going to get full employment? So we were kind of flying in the dark as to what the situation was going to be. And then the other thing we were getting from schools had shut down, and or were not graduating as many people. So we weren't sure what the inflow of exams would be. We weren't even sure if we would be able to run exams. So during the pandemic, it was a very dicey situation as far as our income stream.
And I think you weren't necessarily expecting the savings that you ended up with, because again, nobody knew it would go on for so long.
Yeah, definitely each year we think we're out of the woods, and so we conservatively plan that, okay, at least half the year will be spent in person, and so we budgeted for that. But instead of half the year, the whole year ends up being virtual, or maybe one meeting hybrid. So we have had some savings for sure, and that's kind of dependent on what the climate is outside of us.
Prior to the pandemic, what was the typical bottom line on a budget for the year?
Typically we were trying to surplus about 200,000 or so, 150 to 200,000, and we were coming in around that. And
then with the pandemic, it ended up being more like 6. Is that right?
So we still surplused, I think we're on track for about 150 or $200,000 surplus this year.
Okay.
So I've got to check last year's figures. But the good thing is we didn't actually dip into reserves, which was the great thing.
Because that was the initial expectation, if I recall. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Fazil.
No problem.
Okay. Any other feedback or concerns? Any steps taken that anyone was uncomfortable with? Okay. So we'll do a show of consensus again that folks feel comfortable moving forward on this item. Okay. And so with that, I will pass to Stephen for motions.
Thank you, Sarah. And the first motion that we're looking for is that the board approved that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, Omar.
Omar, seconder?
Mike.
Mike, all in favor? Anyone against? That carries. And the second motion is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover?
Peggy.
Peggy, seconder?
Amber.
Amber, all in favor? Anyone against? And that motion, those two motions carry.
Okay, so we will invite Fazal back once again to present on the Registrant Relations Policy Monitoring Report. Go ahead, Fazal.
Okay, so this is something that the board, I don't think, has heard. The other two policies have come and gone to the board before. So this is policy 2.4, registrant relations. So this is actually, this was a pretty fun report to write. We've had a pretty engaging year as things sort of return to the new normal. So as far as policy requirements, the college is collecting, reviewing, and storing registrant information in a manner that protects privacy and confidentiality, as well as restricting improper access. So our interpretation and evidence of that would be that the college database is secured with multiple firewalls and is held in a Canadian-based cloud server with redundant backups. And staff access is segregated by department and user level access, which is granted through the registrar's office. As far as informs registrants about their professional responsibilities, the college is regularly communicating with the registrants about their ongoing professional responsibilities, including e-blasts, blogs, FAQs, website updates, CE presentations, and practice advice. So we've got a few statistics there. We've got this year, we've got about 31 e-blasts that went out, 176 social media posts. We've created 5 blog posts, and we've given 6 presentations. Just scrolling up a bit, as far as taking reasonable steps to ensure that the policies and procedures are communicated to the registrants in a manner that's clear and timely. We use, as I just described, multiple channels to inform registrants of their obligations or pending policy changes. And so we will use the website to post information and blogs and FAQs. If it's something very important, we'll definitely use direct email. We try not to overdo it with the direct email so that we don't get people fatiguing from opening them. Just going to catch my place up again. As far as social media channels, we're also leveraging relationships with organizations that also have their own reach, such as the association and other CE providers. So we definitely also leverage our QA program, reminding our registrants that they can earn free self-directed CE for attending webinars, events like this. So we definitely will put that out. Stephen makes an announcement to that effect at the beginning of each meeting. As far as informing registrants of significant policy updates or changes that affect them, we have it for quite a few years. I would say at least my full tenure and maybe beyond. The college has subscribed to an informal policy of seeking input on any major policy updates that impact our registrants. So typically we're obliged to circulate bylaws that affect the registrant base. Policies being under that we could completely do in-house without any consultation, but this college has chosen to be more transparent and engaging. So we do even put out policy updates. We have, especially with the advent of technology like this Zoom channel, we are doing focus groups more and more, including with the refracting opticians. We did a lot of these engagements when we were doing our strategic planning with employer groups, with registrants. So we're able to get far better reach quite cost effectively. And it won't be the province of Toronto where we're getting people from all over the province engaging with us because they don't have to travel in. As far as complying with the Human Rights Code and accessibility requirements, aside from the building being fully accommodating for any accommodations or accessibility requirements, we are in compliance. The other thing is also requests for accommodations as far as compliance with quality assurance or with ICR complaints is regularly handled by the panels and by the committee. So if we have a registrant requiring accommodations, we are more than willing to work with them. And as far as taking reasonable steps to respond to registrants' requests and concerns, each department has its own service standards that's communicated in their email signatures and on their voice message mailboxes, and is adjusted depending on what time of the year or how busy it is. The other thing is also we're cognizant of the fact that pretty much the last quarter of the year from October 31st to December 31st is extremely busy at the college, with registrants getting all their last minute QA into the portal, as well as renewing their certificate of registration with us. And so we have proactively for the last year and this year included brought in additional help during this period to deal with requests from registrants on how to upload photos, get into their portal, if they've signed in more than 5 times with the wrong password, doing password resets. So there's lots of that going on right now. And turnaround time is quick. People have started receiving their stickers for their certificates for the 2023 year. So all of that is going on, and we meet weekly with the teams to make sure we monitor what type of phone calls are coming in and if there are any pressure points so that we can sort of resolve them in a timely manner. So that is my report on registrant relations. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Fazal. So similar to the other reports, these really are a means to periodically check in on the governance policies to make sure that they're achieving the desired results. Again, we will look to the questions around, was the registrar's interpretation of the policy reasonable, and did the registrar comply? And once again, the feedback, it directly relates to the performance for the registrar as well as the organization. So let's start. I see Henry and then Stephen have their hands up. Go ahead, Henry.
Could we have the document up again, please?
Sure, you want to pull that up?
Just go back up. I think there's a mistake. Go right there. December 2004. Is that supposed to say 2024?
Good catch, Henry.
That is probably correct. Thank you, Henry.
Okay. Anyway,
We'll have to
otherwise,
go back in time for the next report.
yeah. Anyway, the report is well explained. Very, very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry.
Okay, Stephen.
Well, if you looked at this report, you could almost say this is also a day in the life of someone who works at the college, and it fully explains everything. And I think it's amazing that the college is able to do this all in-house, all these items that have all been listed without having to, like other organizations, they contract it out to organization ABC and media place so-and-so. This is all being done in-house by our staff. And it's amazing how everything just flows along beautifully. And we're so open to the members and the public, and it's just a well-run, oiled machine organization. I want to say kudos to every single person that's involved in this making this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just one quick shout out. I'll talk about the registrar's report more later today, but we have been engaging at the trade shows, and I have to say it's kind of refreshing because most people don't like the college. We take their money, we put them through QA, we have a disciplines process, which is unfortunately there as part of being a regulatory body. But it was nice to have people coming up to the booth and engaging with us and actually saying a lot of nice things. I got a lot of compliments actually about our QA department and registration. The registrants are knowing the team by name, and they've actually said, thank you very much for working with me to do things like uploading my CE credits or figuring things out like that, or helping me with my reinstatements or things like that. So there's a lot of great engagement going on. And it was nice to see people taking a few seconds out of their time to come by the booth and let us know that, and or meet the team that they actually talked to on the phone. So I'm really enjoying having our booths. And I think because we were absent for so many years with the pandemic, it was nice seeing everybody this fall.
Great. Okay, let's hear from Omar and then Mike.
Before I ask my question, I just wanted to complement the point that Fazal just made regarding the trade show. I was there in person, and it was amazing. Honestly, amazing to see the attendance and the attention that was given from everyone there. Especially when Fazal and Amy were doing their presentation. That was so professionally done, unbelievable. I even recorded and took some shots of my own for FYI purposes. So amazing. So congrats.
Thank you.
Fazal, the last point you made in the presentation just now regarding the peak period activity, which has been monitored by the staff, what would you consider as a peak period of activity?
Our busiest period is now. Because our renewals are due by December 31st, and we have 3,200 registrants renewing, hopefully all of them. Plus we have the close of the year where you've got to get your CE requirements. Now, one thing that I'll just plug as a PSA so that Peggy and the quality assurance team could hopefully catch a break. You can upload your credits throughout the year. You don't have to wait till the last 2 weeks of December to get your credits into the portal. So guilty. So the thing is, there's a double crush that comes at the end of the year, especially in December. hopefully when the new registration regulation passes, we might have some control over our renewal date anniversary. Right now it's prescribed in the reg as December 31st is the end. So we've got this huge crush going. And so everybody's running for the portal, trying to upload credits, upload photos. And so it is super busy with just password resets and assistance. And this is a 5-year anniversary of when we started the database, the new database. And so we have probably 1,500 of our 3,200 members updating their photos for their ID cards. So it's a huge crush on printing badges as well. So, we knew that coming in, and we knew all the fun with people trying to upload selfies and JPEGs and all kinds of stuff. So it's an interesting story every week. I touch base with registration every week just to find out what's happening. And we're trying to make sure that everybody gets to the finish line. But October 31st to December 31st is very busy for administrative work.
Thank you.
Very good. And Mike?
Well, I'm glad to hear Fazal at the events and stuff that you guys are getting people coming into the booth and giving you guys kudos, because it's not very often you get people. Usually it's complaints. Negativity comes easy, positivity comes a little harder, but I'm glad to see that, because that's what I was thinking. Our updates that we did for COVID, or not we, you personally, was just great. So I had so many people come up to me in my community just saying what a great help those were, to know what they can and can't do around the COVID situation. So yeah, I tip my hat to you and your organization for those updates.
Thanks.
I forget how many we got up to. Was there 39 or 40?
Yeah, it's up there. The first year we did like almost 28 or so, and normally we were doing like 4 or 5 e-blasts a year. Yeah. So we had some record amounts. I have to say, and I have said it to the board, while they're undersigned by myself and the team, those COVID e-blasts would typically come after a 2 p.m. Doug Ford announcement on something, and then between 2 and 4:30, or sometimes 2 and 7:30 in the evening. Amy, at that time, Melanie was with us, Carolyn, Anna, Peggy, like everybody was at it, trying to get these reports, these bulletins ready and uploaded and distributed so that they were there in people's inbox before the next business day. And we were also coordinating in the background with optometry, because our two respective registrant bases work together in a lot of situations, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't conflicting with each other in our guidance. So it was crazy, but I don't know why, but I love crisis management. So that was, I think, one of the most fun periods of my life.
Well, I know the registrants appreciated it. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, so with that, let's see a show of consensus that folks feel comfortable moving forward. Okay, that's everyone. So Stephen, I will pass to you for the motions on this item.
Thanks, Sarah. And the first motion that we're seeking is the board approve that the registrar's interpretation of the policy was reasonable. Do I have a mover? Henry, second.
Mike,
all in favor? Anyone against? And that motion carries. And motion 2 is that the board agrees that the registrar CEO complied with the policy. Do I have a mover?
Amber,
seconder.
Eric,
See Derek?
Derek, all in favor? Anyone against? And that motion carries.
Okay,
you.
so thank you, Fazal.
you.
So we're going to move on to the board code of conduct monitoring report, and I'm going to pass the floor to Derek Summer, board member, to present that piece.
All right, it helps if I unmute myself, so let's try this. All right, so the conduct monitoring report in question, I assume you've all read it. Do you guys want me to review the entire piece, or do we want to just move to the meat of it? All right.
good with the meat.
Going down a little bit further then, please. So first thing we're looking at here, number 1, a little bit higher, please. The board is responsible, thank you. The board is responsible for ensuring that directors and committee members have fulfilled their obligation to demonstrate loyalty. The board, the interpretation is that the board successfully speaks with one voice despite discussion in dissent prior to voting. The board ensures that once a vote has been cast, it presents a unified front and only allows specific representatives to speak on its behalf. Confidentiality is maintained and the board speaks with one voice, and dissent and discussion occur prior to voting and decisions, as they should. I mean, that's the time where we're supposed to actually exercise that ability. There are no deficiencies on that one, and definitely 3, compliance is fully achieved. For number 2, any questions on number 1 before I go ahead, or shall I just give it to you all? For number 2, the board is responsible for ensuring that directors and committee members demonstrate accountability, diligence, and competence. All board members what that looks like is all board members have a working knowledge of the various legislations and policies that govern the board's functioning. So there is some criticism there. At varying points in meetings and discussions, it's become clear that either the material has not been reviewed or the policies are not understood, as time will be spent reviewing and re-educating members. There still appears to be general concerns about whether all board members are completing the assigned reading prior to meetings and have read the foundational documents. So the grading here was 2, compliance is partially achieved. But saying that, when we go on to number 3, if we can bring that up just a little higher, please. The board is responsible for ensuring that directors and committee members demonstrate integrity. All board members ensure an understanding before voting on a specific issue. So, I mean, based on the previous concern, that could be a concern, except for the fact that in viewing it, every single board member is very careful to make sure that they understand before they vote, which is something that is a wonderful show of integrity and represents the public in a very, very good manner. Though time is taken to review and re-educate the members, the members show integrity by ensuring they understand the issue prior to voting on it. All members seem to ensure complete understanding of issues. Do I have something below that, or is that where that ends for me? Issues prior to voting, and that was, again, compliance is fully achieved. And if we go down a little bit further, we got number 4 there. Board is responsible for ensuring that directors and committee members demonstrate independence. Again, it's what it looks like at this point is members vote independently to ensure they're voting their conscience. Members are voting sincerely and independently with no evidence of coercion or complicity amongst members. There is no evidence to suggest that board members are voting along predetermined lines and are acting independently at all times. Okay, so compliance fully achieved. And finally, number 5, I think is no, 2 more, sorry. The board is responsible for ensuring that directors and committee members demonstrate diversity and cultural humility. The board removes systemic biases from its functions. In practice, this is a very challenging one to do, and I would have been very surprised if full compliance was ever achieved on it or can be achieved on it, but we're moving forward in the right direction, I think. Systemic bias in the form of reference to specific holidays, for example, or activities that may exclude others, Christmas parties, things like that. I mean, stuff that's so systemic that it's a challenge to move, but we're working towards it and we're becoming aware of it with our DEI training. Some comments made without thought or an everyday situation seem to reflect a societal bias. However, these are slips, are foundational, and are actively being addressed. So I think that's positive. So compliance is partially achieved on that. And then the final, the board is responsible for ensuring the code of conduct is enforced. The board engages in positive meetings free from bullying and harassment. The board meetings run smoothly without the appearance of undue pressures from members and with positive interactions. Thankfully, the board as a whole keeps and maintains the standard and does an admirable job self-regulating itself. And again, compliance seems to be fully achieved. I think that's all I've got there. I don't think there's a bottom to that. Is there any further down? Nope, we're good. That's just my signature. So
thank you, Derek. So we'll open the floor to questions, and I see Henry already has his hand up. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, way back early. Number 2, Derek, the second one there. Okay, I'm really kind of curious about, there generally appears some concern about whether board members are completing. Now, where does that come from? Is it purely subjective? And the other question then is, how can we address that?
So I think it's something that the board has acknowledged. As to whether that's subjective or not, I mean, this is from my perspective. I mean, I'm the one who completed the report, so this is what I've seen. Where it comes from, though, Henry, is some conversations that have happened about the Regulated Health Professions Act and things like that. And I think we've already identified in many ways how to fix this with better training. And I think that conversation has taken place at a board level. Keep in mind, this is a monitoring report based on what we've seen over the last year and what we haven't fixed yet. I mean, I think we have a plan in place to fix it.
Does that address your questions, Henry, in terms of, okay. And then in terms of the action items, it sounds like from Derek's interpretation that they may be in place, but just wouldn't have been reported on with respect to the monitoring report. Is that correct, Derek?
Yeah, so basically on that one, for example, I know one of the conversations that took place when there was some challenges or questions about whether or not there's a full interpretation of the document, the legislative documents. One of the conversations I know that from our budgeting report that there's a ton of training coming forward in the new year with the idea of, you know, achieving a better representation on this. So I see in my perspective, I see that most of the stuff is being addressed. It just hasn't had a chance to be addressed yet.
Thank you.
Derek. Samir?
Thanks, Henry, for the same question. I was actually going to touch base on number 2. Derek, an evidence area, we had mentioned about materials not been reviewed prior to the meeting and so on. Like how did you come up with that evidence, or where would you find that evidence, or how would you find that evidence to be like
so
from that way? And then second thing is there any support that we can as a board we can support to the college or we can support to the members that they're fulfilling their due diligence basically? Is there any other way? So in terms of basically my thoughts are, so say if I'm logging into to the college portal as a board member, it basically somehow, is there any way we can track that this member opened this document and how long read it and so on? It's just basically just a thought. This is really different world that I'm thinking of, but again, I would like to gather your thoughts on that, how you come up with that comment.
Thanks, Samir. So it was twofold again, the one on the kind of evidence and then the second on the support.
So Samir, most of what I've reported on here is anecdotal. It's based on my perception of what I've seen. So therefore, I do acknowledge that it could be incorrect, and I do recognize that as a possibility. However, I will say that one of the practices that we have is to go over things line by line by line by line to make sure that everybody's read it. And that's a bit of a concern to me because, I mean, if we've all read the documents, we should be able to jump to the meat, like we're doing with this document right now, which I appreciate. And again, it's a learning curve. As far as whether or not there are ways to track whether things have been opened and such, I'm not a tech expert and I'm not going to get into that conversation, though I'm pretty sure there are. What I would rather focus on at this point is that every member of this council is here because they choose to be and because of their integrity. And I think if there's questions or they have concerns, or maybe they just don't understand the information, I'd rather have maybe a mentoring program set up in some which way where we could, like, if I don't understand something, can I reach out to you, Samir, and ask you the question? Can we make sure that we're on par? I mean, I'm good with that side of it. I don't think we need Big Brother to be checking to make sure we've opened and done our homework the night before or the week before or whatever it is. But I think we all need to take our own responsibility for making sure that we fully understand, even if we're reading everything, that we fully understand what we're walking in to have a conversation about. And I think we are. I think the integrity level of this council is huge. These are just based on what I've seen watching for the last year. These would be the concerns I have.
Okay,
thank you, Derek. Yeah, thank you, Derek. Just to follow up on that, maybe I guess what we can do is basically when we talk about specific policies, and this is what I need under the document as well. It's actually attached. The policies interpretation is attached within the document. Sometime like yesterday, we missed the appendix 1 or 2, whatnot, but that's not the heart of it. But I'm seeing that attached. But again, you made a great point that if we have some as a person basically assigned that if they have any questions, they can reach out to for clarification and so on. So that's definitely appreciated. Thanks.
Okay. And Omar.
Yeah, Derek, can we go back to systematic bias? I think that was the last point you,
Systemic bias, absolutely, Omar.
number 4, really.
Okay, can we just
We can
scroll
scroll
up on
down a
the
little bit,
screen?
please.
Hold on. If you can kindly, yeah.
It should be number, that one right there, number 5.
Number 5, yeah. So, so in light of that, this I always view this as a very diversity and cultural humility. I always view this as something very, very important and dear and close, not only to me but to all of us, you know, as human. And and I think we can never stop learning because it's so complex and so sensitive, you know. And the more we know of each other's culture and behavior and practices, it will better the relationship, you know. So my question to you is, what give rise to remove systematic bias? Has there been an incident or instance where perhaps it generates a concern? Was there an example of?
So what specifically prompted me to put this one into place? And I'm gonna disclose a couple of things here. Is that, Omar, I'm not a Christian. I'm not. That's just a fact of where I am right now, and I have no problem with people of a Christian faith. I don't have a problem with people of any faith whatsoever. However, when we're talking about Christmas parties, or we're talking about let's do an Easter egg hunt or things like that, I worry as a non-Christian that there are other people in the room who are also non-Christian who may find that uncomfortable. So I would like, my thought on this was that maybe we need to be more conscious of the words that we speak to be more accepting of the cultures around us. I don't know everybody's culture, but I know that sometimes the stuff that's from mine, I should possibly not share sometimes. We should keep it as neutral as possible, if that makes sense.
Did
Yeah,
that address your question, Omar?
yeah, it does. It does. You know what? I'm glad that you inserted here that it's been addressed. And you know, but I would like to see some more training on this, because as I mentioned, we can never stop learning, you know, especially on this issue. So maybe once a year we can have some more orientation as we did previously. It'd be a healthy thing to do.
And honestly, Omar, I agree with you completely, because it's systemic bias is sneaky. It comes out of backgrounds that we don't even realize are there sometimes. To me, the training is incredibly important, but it's also training that needs to be done every single year, so it stays in our forefront of our minds, so we don't forget, and we are conscious of it, and we're respectful of each other. So I would love to see that training as a part of every part of our orientation every single year.
Okay, thank you, folks. So we don't, oh, sorry, go ahead, Omar.
No, it's fine. No, I just, I commend that recommendation. Yeah.
So we don't have a motion on this item, but I was hearing some recommendations coming out of it around continued connection and communication with each other if we don't understand things, either potentially through informal mentorship and reaching out. And then the second around that commitment to continued learning with respect to the systemic bias and increasing the neutrality. Do folks generally, just a show of hands, agree with some of those next steps on this piece? We do a show for consensus. Okay, seeing most folks there. Thank you, Diana. Okay, so it looks like there's a couple of potential action items coming out of that, or recommendations. So thank you, Derek. So I'm now going to pass the floor over to Stephen to take us through the assignment of board monitoring reports for 2023. Stephen?
Thanks, Sarah. The board policy development policy 4-24 provides that the board will monitor 8 of its own board policies. These policies are monitored over a 2-year cycle. So today we'd like to ask for board members to volunteer to take responsibility for each of the 4 policies that are on deck for monitoring in 2023. These policies are the board monitoring policy 4-25, and that would be due in March of 23. The board annual strategic agenda work plan policy 4-21, which would be due in June of 2023. The role of the board officers policy 4-05, which would be due in October of 23, and the board policy development policy 4-24 in December. So I'd like to ask now for volunteers to do something a little different this year and ask for volunteers for to finish these reports now, so that anyone who hasn't completed a monitoring report yet, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. If anyone would like to volunteer, and then you would know when the dates are due, and you'd have plenty of time to work on these. Now, as far as volunteers jumping in, I know that I want to thank the people that have completed already, Peggy, Netta, Kevin, and Derek, for they've done their time in the trenches and have completed the and did an excellent job at it. So to start things off, I'm going to volunteer to do the board monitoring system policy 4-25 to do it presented in March of 23, because I haven't done one yet. So I've got to jump in and get my feet wet. So I volunteered to do the first one. Do I have any takers for the board annual strategic work plan policy?
I see Diana's hand. I'm not sure
Okay.
if there was a specific one you were volunteering for, Diana.
I'll take the one for December.
December?
Yes, I haven't done one either.
Okay. Anyone?
Okay, I see Elsa.
Elsa?
Oh, you're just muted.
I will take the October role of board officers policy.
Okay. And that leaves the one due in June.
I see Dorina.
Dorina?
I'll take the remainder.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for stepping up to the plate and volunteering. And we'll now I'll turn it back to Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the competency review and evaluation process. And we're going to be inviting Tanya Namabian, who's the chair of quality assurance, to present that piece. Do we have Tanya on the line already?
I don't see Tanya in the waiting room. Maybe Carolyn might be able to connect with her.
Yeah, or Peggy. Oh,
Oh,
there's
here we
Tanya.
go.
Oh, good.
Wish and you shall receive.
So good.
Perfect. So we'll just give Tanya a moment to
Oh,
connect.
there we go. Oh, good.
Wish and you shall receive.
So good.
And so Tanya, we'll just obviously get you to lower that in the background. There you go. Just give Tanya a moment. Yeah. Yeah, if you can just mute that live stream, that would be perfect.
Oh, good.
Good. And then we will pass the floor over to you, Tanya. So whenever you're ready.
Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to sort my little, there we go, the screen out so I can see everybody. Good morning, everyone. So I'm presenting today on the quality assurance program. So just a quick review. The RHPA requires that all healthcare professionals in Ontario have a quality assurance program. So despite that our members think, or the registrants think that we're doing it to punish them, it's actually the RHPA that's doing that. So this is to ensure that we're following our standards of practice and being professional. So and it's directed by the college's board. So right now our competency review and evaluation process is the quality sorry guys, I'm a little nervous because I haven't spoke on one of these calls before. So the competency review process is a mechanism that the Quality Assurance Committee uses to monitor registrants' participation in and compliance with the quality assurance program. So right now we do 3 different things. We audit the registrants' professional portfolios. We do participation in a multi-source feedback and participation in peer and practice assessments. So right now, 20% of registrants are randomly selected to participate annually. And half of them do just the CRE process, so the competency review and evaluation. And then the other half do the competency review and evaluation and also do the multi-source feedback. And then from these audits, we can determine if anyone needs a peer and practice assessment. So that's kind of what we're doing currently. Now, just recently, the Quality Assurance Committee, we've reviewed this. And so some things that have been helping us with that are the Quality Assurance Portal, which is making it easier to identify kind of a basic look at registrants' portfolios to kind of see where they're at. In order for us to have a fulsome look and to make sure everything's done correctly, we do actually have to do a deep dive. So we can't just pull. If it was just complete, it wouldn't actually be a fulsome review because it might say all of their credits are uploaded. However, when we go in, it's actually missing a certificate or something. So we've done some stakeholder feedback and an environmental scan. And what this has actually shown is that the MSF process, so that multi-source feedback, isn't necessarily as reliable or as efficient as we would like it to be. And that from this, we're not really getting registrants who are making improvements to their practice. What we did, however, notice is when there were registrants who were recommended to do a PPA, so a peer and practice review, there was actually more registrants making changes to their practice versus people who just scored lowly on the multi-source feedback. And so from this, what we're recommending is that we actually discontinue the multi-source feedback process and in its place do a random selection of 2 to 5% of registrants who are seemingly compliant with their professional portfolio, and having them to actually be sent to do a peer and practice assessment. And then to monitor compliance with the professional portfolio requirements, the committee recommends selecting 10% of these seemingly compliant and then 25% seemingly non-compliant registrants to have a fulsome professional portfolio review. And so to allow time for the registrants to adapt to this change, the committee recommends that this process actually become effective in 2024. And so for this current year coming into 2023, the competency review and evaluation process remains at 20% of registrants being randomly selected to have a fulsome review of their portfolio. And then just on another note, if registrants are selected for a random peer and practice assessment, they do not have to pay for it. And so what the costs, how we would cover the cost is if we discontinue the MSF, which was fairly costly, we would use that to pay for these peer and practice assessments for the random selection. And it's also important to be noted that if a registrant is given a peer and practice assessment for non-compliance, that they're actually responsible for paying for it. And so I made it through, I think, with some success, even though I'm so nervous. And so I'll just open the floor for any questions, comments, concerns.
Thank you, Tanya. Wonderful presentation. And we will open the floor to questions. Mike and then Jarina.
Well done, Tanya.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if we should be adding in the document somewhere that I know that people or other registrants think that maybe that we're part of the board and we get away with things. We don't have to do the portfolio. So I think that maybe we should add in the document somewhere that all directors and elected registrants must do the portfolio yearly, so they don't escape by getting out as being part of the board.
Okay. I think I'm not sure if we have that somewhere else. Like, I don't know if that falls in a quality assurance part.
We do. We have it in a
I was
separate
going to say,
document.
I'm sure it's somewhere noted that we are actually all get ours reviewed. but that is a good point.
Yeah, it's in the governance manual, Mike. I'm happy
Oh,
to.
I realize it is, but I'm talking about this document. When people are watching, viewing the streaming, they're not looking at the other document and may never look at the other document. By having it in this document, it shows that what we're up to.
Okay, I can definitely pass that feedback on.
Okay, Jarina? And then Peggy?
Yeah, Tanya, it was about time that this committee came up to this conclusion, and I'm really, really looking forward to the next level of intelligence that is added to this. Excellent. Can you review that step? Who do you refer to, the compliant ones or the non-compliant ones that you wish?
So for the PPA, so basically the PPA is going to replace multi-source feedback. So we noticed during COVID, we actually put the multi-source feedback on pause because it was challenging for registrants to be able to complete it. And that's kind of where this all started from. So what will happen is registrants who are compliant, just like how we used to have compliant members do the multi-source feedback, what would happen is a portion of those members will do the PPA instead. However, there will also be registrants who are seemingly non-compliant that will still do PPAs just like how they always have. Does that make sense?
So this PPA is different than it was before, or
it's similar. And so we have gone to remote PPAs, which are seemingly more easy to complete with registrants, as opposed to actually going into the practice. And coming into the year, we are going to be into the new year, we are going to be looking at how we actually administer those PPAs and if there's changes that can be made to that as well. But for now, we would move forward with how we've been doing them throughout COVID and on.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. We'll hear from Peggy and then Diana.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Still getting at my unmute button. At the bottom of page 4, I think that's where you're outlining what you're proposing to do going forward. And if I'm reading it correctly, or I read it correctly last night,
Sure.
It sounded like compliant registrants who you're randomly selecting can end up going to the PPA, but I didn't see that happening for the non-compliant registrants. I was reading through and it says the non-compliant registrants will have a fulsome review, but then I didn't see a follow-up that said that would then go to PPA for people who didn't pass the fulsome review. Am I misinterpreting something, or?
No, that's a good question. So what happens is when registrants are non-compliant, they come to the committee and we review what information we're missing from them. And we chase them for a while to try to get the information we're missing. And then from there, the committee would make a decision as to when we would actually send a non-compliant for a PPA. So not every time, because sometimes registrants seem non-compliant, right? So we're like, oh, we look at their portfolio and they're just missing uploading credits. So what we would do is we would be in touch with them and let them know, hey, you forgot to upload these credits. So we're not going to send every seemingly non-compliant registrant for a PPA. It's something that gets determined at a committee level, whether, if we keep chasing them, then we say, oh,
This looked like it wasn't in there at all. Can we pull up that page 4, or is it up?
Yeah,
and
I
I've
think
shrunk
it's up.
And I've shrunk it.
I'm just looking through my own notes to see where we talk about the seemingly non-compliant.
So second point, 2 to 5% of these registrants will be randomly selected to participate in a peer and practice assessment. That's of the seemingly compliant registrants, but then when you talk about the seemingly non-compliant, there'll be a fulsome review, but then it doesn't look like any of them are getting selected for PPA.
Yeah, it's because it has to come to the committee to determine after that fulsome review whether or not we would send them for a PPA. So not every person who is non-compliant would have a PPA.
maybe you can put something in there about it coming back to the committee, because right now it just looks like, oh, somebody who's compliant might get a PPA and somebody who's not compliant won't.
Okay, that's good feedback. I get where you're coming from on that. We don't want registrants to think that, oh, the people who are following the rules are getting kind of a harsher, not that QA is
just maybe a little more clarity with the wording. But, you know, I'm a lay person, so, you know, I may just be missing something that your registrants wouldn't in terms of how the process works.
Sure. Does that give you enough answer to what you were looking for, Peggy?
Right. I just, you know, my preference would be to see the clarity on that in that document.
Yeah, it's something that would be represented in the QA policy, but it's not them being referred for a PPA. The non-compliance being referred for a PPA isn't something that's part of the quality assurance, like the review and evaluation process. That kind of falls in a different spot. Right.
So with a random selection for the seemingly compliant, and it's a decision for the non-compliance that you've checked.
Correct.
But I think it would be worthwhile to mention it in there, like the other point about referencing back to the other documents that aren't in front of us right now, just for some clarity on it.
And I see, Fazal, you have your hand up. Did you have a note on that piece?
Yeah, I just want to remind the board, this is not a comprehensive document explaining how the whole program works. The briefing note is actually bringing attention to a portion of the process and a change to that portion. So the whole discussion is around moving away from the multi-source feedback and the interviews to using those funds and redirecting them to peer and practice assessments. So it's not, this briefing note is, the audience is you, the board. It's not the registrants. And it's not an entire launch of a brand new program. It's an edit to a section of the program that we will definitely be, as Tanya said, because it's going to be rolled out at the beginning of 24. We're going to use all of 23 educating the registrant base on what the changes are to the entire to the section and reviewing how the whole process works. So really, edits to this briefing note are kind of irrelevant. It's not going to the registrant base.
Thanks, Fazal. I think that's a good reminder for folks.
We've basically verbally edited it right now. Sorry, Sarah.
Right, that's okay. We've got two more hands, and I'm just conscious of our time as well, as we're running a little behind in the agenda. So let's hear from Diana and then Samir.
I wanted to say that I thought this was a really well done report, and you know, easy for me to read and see what you'd done and what where you wanted to go with it. And I like the suggestions you have, and I'm in favor of that.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Diana.
Our staff supports us a lot. So Peggy really helped out with this.
And Samir.
Thank you, Tanya, for putting this together. Your committee did definitely a commendable job, much needed in present environment. Actually, the question I was going to ask, Fazal has answered, but I'm just going to get that confirmation back again. As you said, the 2 to 5% registrant, that compliant registrant, will be chosen out of that to do the PPA, and college will cover the cost if everything turned out to be great on their end. Faisal said it, I knew it, but I just want to quickly clarify one more time. The budget for that, is it included, or is it going to be included in 2024?
So I think what the idea is that we'll be using the money. It'll be in the budget for 2024 because in 2023, we're keeping the process similar to how it is now. And then in 2024, hopefully the funds that we use towards MSF will then be shifted to cover the cost of the PPAs. So it'll kind of just be a shuffle in the budget, I think.
Fantastic.
And I'm
Great,
seeing nodding from Fazal. Netta, can I give you the last word, and then we need to move along on the agenda.
Tanya, I want to say that you did a great job. Before we let Tanya go, maybe we just give her a couple of minutes to go over the chat and read the text that she has.
It's a good suggestion. While she's doing that, why don't I see from the board a show of consensus that you feel comfortable moving forward on this document? And with these proposed changes, okay, and so then I will therefore pass to Stephen to go ahead with a motion. Diana, that was your show of consensus, or did you have an additional? Okay, perfect. So we will move to Stephen.
Thank you, Sarah. And the motion that we're seeking is that the board approve the changes to the competency review and evaluation process effective 2024 with the CRE process for 2023 remaining at 20% of registrants being randomly selected. Do I have a mover?
I'll make the motion, Derek.
Derek,
Neda.
second. Neda, all in favor? Anyone dissent? And that motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, and thank you to Tanya for the presentation. With that, we're going to take a short break. A reminder for folks to mute yourselves and turn your videos off during the break. We will put up a timer and we will see you back in about 15 minutes time. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a nice break. We'll just give folks a moment to rejoin. And we're going to jump straight into the agenda. And our first item up is the approval of the life member applications. And I'm going to pass to Amy Stein, the Deputy Registrar, to take that piece over.
Thanks, Sarah. So you have 6 briefing notes before you that are all with respect to applications for life membership. I'm going to speak to all of them together because they all carry the same considerations. And then I will turn it back over to Sarah to lead any discussion. So the qualifications for life membership are set out in the college's bylaws, as well as a policy that was approved by the board this year. It's up to the board to approve applications for life membership, and the bylaws provide that that approval must have a 2/3 majority. So you have 6 individuals who have been reviewed after having applied for life membership by the administrative team. So we've brought you forward confirmation that all 6 of these individuals meet all of the criteria for life membership that are set out in the bylaws. And they also meet the eligibility criteria that are set out in the policy that was approved by the board. So it's up to the board now, because life membership is a discretionary designation, to consider each of these applications and then to hold a vote on granting life membership to these 6 individuals. So I see that there might be a hand already. I'll turn it over to Sarah for questions and comments.
Thank you, Amy. And so just a reminder that in order to pass, the applications require a 2/3 majority vote of those present at the board meeting. So let's start before we get into that with any questions. And Henry, you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Hey, just for information, Amy, explain to me what the benefit of life membership is.
Absolutely. So life membership is an honorary designation for individuals who have permanently retired from the practice of opticianry. And the way that it's calculated is someone who has been a long-standing practicing optician, where if you take their age together with their number of years registered, that must total at least 85. So what life membership grants someone is the ability to refer to themselves as a life member of the college and to retain some connection to the profession without being eligible, for example, for board membership or anything like that. They're exempt from paying registration fees, but it's a way of recognizing people's contribution to the profession and to recognize that they might benefit from remaining connected, from participating in stakeholder feedback, and offering us their wealth of experience.
So it has nothing to do with with your teacher's membership, staying in it after you retired, for example. You can keep your health benefits and stuff like that. It doesn't have anything to do with that kind of business.
No, because the college doesn't confer those kinds of benefits. So it's really about staying connected with your regulatory body.
Okay, so it's just a nice thing to do.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification, Henry and Amy. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, Sarah, I just want to say that congratulations to each one of these individuals, that they've worked their lifetimes graduating from going to school, working hard, and then working their whole lifetime to retirement and dealing with the public day in, day out, dealing with the business day in, day out. And I think it's such an, it's not a lot, but it's an honor that they have achieved this award. And I think well deserving on all of them to go through their working careers.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, Diana?
I think it says a lot about the college that they want to become life members, because there's not a lot of professions where, you know, that would even mean anything, but it's obviously very meaningful to them, and they're, you know, they're proud to be these members of the college. So I think that's great.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so with that, I will pass to Stephen for a motion on this item.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion that we're looking for approval on is to approve applications for life membership for John Gregory Chesser, Anne DeFrancesco, Jenny Kelfin, Cindy Sao Chung Lee, Ate Luke, and Margaret Marie Sonchen. Do I have a mover?
I'll move it, Derek.
Derek, seconder?
Samiri.
Okay.
Henry.
All in favor? Anyone against? The motion carries.
Okay, so we will now move on to the registration policy updates, and I'm going to invite Dorina Reyes, the chair of registration, to present that piece. Dorina?
Yes, this item is before you, the board, to actually make a decision to consider an extension for the temporary addenda to the contact lens fitting policy and the contact lens mentor policy. So a little bit of background. In 2020, the year of the pandemic, we noticed a lot of problems faced by the students and registrants in finding placements and in fitting contact lenses and fulfilling their needs for in-field placements. So we decided at the level of the committee, and the board approved this, that the contact lens fitting policy will permit students to perform up to 25% of eyeglass fittings on peer-to-peer basis. And then the remaining of 75% of the fits were to be performed in actual field practice on patients. And also under the contact lens mentor policy, where we faced more difficult to see students being placed in the field, we said that under the temporary addendum, the contact lens mentor policy eligibility to qualify as contact lens mentors was extended to include the opticianry instructors in academic settings. Therefore, the teachers that would instruct the students to learn the means of contact lenses and the academic side would become their mentors too. So for your consideration, according to our last meeting on November 14, this year, the registration committee considered that similar concerns and difficulties still apply today for students to find placements in the field. And then we concluded that we would extend this addendum till December 31st, 2023. So for the public interest purpose, we are seeing this of importance because we're helping in a way that students qualifying for in-field placement will actually be there to enroll in the field of opticianry. And then for diversity and equity and inclusion consideration, we see that students get qualification that is actually required by the College of Opticians to sign up and register qualified opticians. So back again, we recommend an extension for a year, and it is before you, the board, to make the final decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorina. So we'll open the floor now to questions. I see Derek has his hand up. Go ahead, Derek.
How long have we been granting this extension? Or
From 2020, when the pandemic started, we noticed based on requests and mentions from respective people that they cannot find placement due to closures, due to lack of people that are mentors. There is a resistance to becoming a mentor. There is resistance to becoming a mentor because the practice of contact lenses has been reduced significantly amongst opticians. And it is difficult for students to find a real placement, in particular for fitting rigid contact lenses.
Okay, what evidence are we, sorry, follow up to that. What evidence are we basing the request for an extension? Is it just anecdotal or have we actually received more concerns?
We have received more concerns, and we're not considering the return to practice fully and 100% there to actually recover from this problem. So we just we wanted to extend this to 1 more year until we figure out what to do, whether to introduce more incentive to people to become mentors, to there is a sum of factors that influence this interruption.
Yeah. I yield the floor if anybody else has questions, or I can keep going.
Say that again, please.
Let's Derek is wondering, Derek has more questions, but is wondering
I'd
if
love to
anybody-
hear them. I think it's very constructive if you and I take the floor here.
Any other questions before we throw it back to Derek for his next question? I'm not seeing any, so the floor is yours, Derek.
Thank you, Sarah. From my perspective, I was not particularly in favor of this particular amendment back when we made it in 2020.
Yes.
I feel that in my practice, anecdotally, there has been a return to practice. We're seeing similar numbers in the stores, both for patient sales, for patient retention, and for requests from students to actually work with us that suggest that we're back where we should be. I question at the point that we're going to keep giving this extension, maybe we should just reduce the logbook numbers by 25% and be done with it, because I think we're losing significant value by saying, okay, you can practice on, your peers. You're not going to run into the same challenging situations with your peers that you're going to run into with a patient. And I question whether or not we're actually meeting the public interest by giving them this 25% buyout. And if we are, then maybe we should just remove the 25%.
All right, so that sounds like a good idea to the entire picture, but yet I think geographically situations are much different. I think in the area where you're from, you see more return of normalcy, but here in the Greater Toronto, where most of people are because of the schools, it's not quite so. So it's really a high volume of students to be accommodated by willing mentors, and there are not many willing mentors. I can tell you that a lot of the practice of contact lenses is taken away from opticians by the optometry clinics, and there is no real good way of attracting or working with students at that level. So at least something is given to them at the level of the school on peer-to-peer practice. And then some, of course, should be, I'm totally agreeing with you, Derek. They have to be in the field and actually get the gist of what it is to have the confidence fitting eyewear on patients with all the dimensions that includes. But yet, a lot of people do not have means of getting placed in field placement. So this is why the two schools have expressed to us that it is paramount that we still help the students in such a way. So that is my explanation to you. For future, I think this year of extension of this plan, I think we definitely at the level of this committee, whoever is going to mend and take care of this, the dealings of the registration committee, I think they have to go deep in finding a solution and further scan the situation at large.
So,
okay, thank you,
sorry.
Tarina.
got
I'll
one
check
more
in,
from
Derek, to
Sarah, if I
see
can
if
throw it
that
back in.
answered.
Dorena, I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate what you're saying, and I think you and I both agree on where we're coming from with this. So my only addition that I would love to see, I have no problem with granting an extension to 2023, but I would love to see this college do a proper environmental scan to see whether or not our anecdotal information from the schools matches up with what the professionals are telling us. And the different stakeholders are telling us before we go and make that decision in 2023, whether we're going to extend this again. I would love to be able to equip the registration committee with the facts to be able to go, this is why, yes or no.
Yes, I agree with you. And I can strongly make a suggestion to the future members of this group to actually look further into this, because time is sort of up, but yet we're still dealing with a lot of queries and impossibility to finish this up.
Thank you, Dorena. I want to allow for Amy and Fazelle to weigh in as well. Amy, did you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just wanted to note, because I know that Derek mentioned, perhaps looking at reducing the number of fits rather than extension. The number of fits is actually hardwired in the registration regulations. So at this point in time, there is no discretion for the committee or the board to make any adjustments to that. So I think when the committee was approaching this was a view to working within our existing parameters. Now, that being said, as this board is aware, the college is seeking amendments to the registration regulation, and we have been for some time. When those amendments, if they are approved, it will be the board's discretion through the registration committee to determine the practicum that will make up the entry to practice requirements for opticians. And a lot of work is already being done, and more work is going to be done in the coming year to do that environmental scan and gather risk-based data to help the board make an informed decision on where to land on what that practicum should look like, what the numbers will be, and how people go about achieving those fits. So this is certainly on the registration committee's radar for work in 2023.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Does that address your concerns, Derek, with respect to the environmental scan?
Yes, actually, overall it does. Like, I don't have a problem with the extension. I just don't want us to see this college in a situation where we're just giving the extension over and over and over again. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'd rather have numbers to be able to defend to our membership and to the public as to why we're doing this. That's where I'm coming from. And it sounds like registration's got it well in hand, and I have faith in their ability. So with that, I have no problem putting a motion forward to accept this extension.
Okay, thank you, Derek.
If I may jump to follow up on what you're saying, Derek. I hope the future committee will look very thoroughly at this matters, in the sense that even if the registration means will change, as Amy said, there's still intrinsic part of opticianry, and I hope to see them still going on as a strength to entering the profession instead of not having them. So for now, let's navigate until we have a little bit more of a better direction on what's going on. So that's why.
Thank you,
we're
Jordan.
here. And then Mike.
Fazelle, oh, sorry.
I'm going to reserve. You know what, Amy hit
Okay.
all the salient points, but what's coming next. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Mike?
I think environmental scan's a great thing, great idea. The registration committee is in a hard place. This problem's been going on for many years, and I don't think it's going to go away. Hopefully, if they do the environmental scan, they bring back some good information. I know that we also need to remind our registrants that they all had to have somebody mentor them, and it's very difficult when you work with somebody that refuses to mentor when somebody mentored them and they have the ability to do so. So I just wanted to put that in the forefront that, for registrants that have the ability to mentor, should step up and help out our new registrants coming forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Neda?
Just definitely agree with Mike. and I had a discussion actually with Seneca as well, that they can maybe facilitate and make the life of the mentor a bit easier, because I'm a mentor for a couple of years right now. And like if I take, let's say, 2 students and mentor them in for glasses and contact lenses, it means I'm going to end up sitting and signing 2 booklets. Each one is like 1,000 signatures that I have to do there. I had a discussion with them to see if that process can be done a little bit more digitalized and can be done a little bit easier. And hopefully that process is going to go forward, because we have to train them, we have to monitor them, we have to do all these steps. And every semester, let's say every 4 or 5 months, we have to do these signatures. We have to sit down and do all these, checking all the fitting and dispensing that they did. Hopefully these processes become a little bit easier, more opticians, they can mentor students.
Okay, thank you, Netta. Derek, I'm going to give you the last comment, and then we'll move forward with a motion on this extension.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, Sarah. Just building off of what Netta and Mike have just shared, a revolutionary concept in my mind, but would it make sense for us to start looking at our professional obligations as opticians and set the expectation early on, right, coming out of school, that if you're going to be a licensed optician, there is an expectation for you to give back to this industry and possibly help the next generation of opticians. I don't necessarily know we want to have it punitive in any way, shape, or form, but I'd like to at least set an expectation that, hey, you know what, students are going to come to you, and it's your responsibility as a member of this profession to help.
Well, well said, but I think a little bit more incentive would be necessary for somebody to be more willing to do that. So I think at the level of Quality Assurance Committee, maybe that committee should come up with something to incentivize the mentorship, so we can have more people stepping in to do that.
Thank you, Jarina. In the interest of moving forward with the agenda, and I think there could be future opportunities to unpack that further. With respect to the extension specifically, I'd love to get a show of consensus whether folks feel comfortable moving to a motion on this item. Okay, I think I saw everyone. And so I will pass to Stephen then.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion will read that the board approve the proposed extension to the addenda to the contact lens fitting policy and the contact lens mentor policy as recommended by the registration committee. Do I have a mover?
Kevin.
Mike. Kevin. Seconder?
Mike.
Mike. All in favor? Anyone against? That carries.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to move along now to the registrar's report, and I will invite Fazal Khan, the registrar and CEO, to present that information.
Okay, I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit because we're a few minutes behind. So I'm just going to highlight a few things. I'm assuming everyone has read the report. A few things to note. We had a good conversation with Allison Henry at the Ministry of Health regarding our longstanding registration regulation, which has been sort of in the works for about 7 years. So we had a good conversation about that, and I think we'll get some movement in 2023 that we should see this come to the finish line. So it was a very positive conversation with her, and we are enjoying a good relationship there. External relations, I touched on that we've had a really busy fall. We were invited to the association's AGM, which was a virtual event, and then we sort of pivoted back to trade shows. So on October 16th, there was the AOE trade show where we had a trade show and a speaking invitation, and saw about 400 registrants there. October 21st, 23rd was busy with the team at the exams. November 5th, That was really a busy weekend. So the 5th, we actually attended a student event Saturday night, which was very well attended. And we had some really good conversations with a lot of international students. And we'll share more on that at some point. But it was a great opportunity to engage them. And actually, one of our team from registration, our manager, Anna, was there. And Peggy also, quality assurance, was there. And we had some good conversations about utilizing the PLAR program to see if we could get a lot of these international optometrists converted, bridge them and convert them to opticians in a quicker time frame. So I think it was really well worth attending that night. On the 6th, we attended the trade show, and that was very well attended by registrants. I think there was over 450 registrants there. So we had some great flow to the booth. The NACOR meetings were held November 16th, 17th, and I'll go into those more in detail when I touch on the NACOR report. Let's see, elections we all are aware of. Space planning, just, we have 5 years left on the lease, but there's a lot of changes happening in the regulatory space. Some colleges have gone fully remote and given up their premises. The College of Physiotherapists, for instance, has quite a large space and they've gone fully remote. And so there's talk amongst groups of regulators about possible space sharing and things like that. So we are exploring those conversations early, just to see if there's any way that we can further reduce our footprint and reduce our rental and equipment rentals and things like that. So it's long-term, but we're actively pursuing different options, including a regulatory hub that BC operates under. And finally, I'll just add 2 quick things that are not in the report. The team has been working this fall on creating what we call dashboards, which are what we're hoping to do is create some graphic representations of important key metrics and statistics to include in every quarterly report. So you'll have one from ICR, one from QA, one from registration, so that you can get some valuable metrics that you can compare every quarter. So we're just working on that and going to launch that at the next board meeting. And then the other thing is also the registration team and the quality assurance team kicked off what will hopefully be a twice-a-year event, which is a welcome webinar that we are going to be inviting brand new licensed opticians to the sort of a welcome to the college webinar that orients them on how to use the registrant portal, the QA portal, where they can find things on our website, who the team is, and just get them a little bit oriented what their quality assurance requirements are in their first year of practice. So we had one just last Friday, and we're hoping to have one after each major exam registration sprint. So that is the registrar's report. If there are any questions, happy to take it.
Any questions? Okay. Not seeing any questions for you, Fazal.
Okay.
So with that, we can move on to the rest of the reports.
So I am going to, if you don't mind, just point out something. Normally, I would leave the NACOR
Sure.
report as part of the omnibus. I did want to point out a couple of important things at the NACOR report or highlights. One of them was we had a discussion around exam fees. Every province is running the same exam, and our NACOR office sends moderators to every province to make sure the exam is administered consistently across the country. Those costs have been quite burdensome on some of the smaller provinces that are running smaller sessions to fly in the moderators from NACOR. So exam fees were reviewed. They haven't been revisited since 2019. So there is a $25 per section increase coming. So the exam for contact lenses is set at $750. It's going to be moving to $775. And as well for eyeglasses, it'll be moving from $750 to $775. So this represents a cost recovery to shift the cost of the moderator from the province back to the NACOR office and then reflected in the exam price. So that's going to be effective as of March 2023. And then the other thing that was, I think, important was on the second day of the national meetings, we had an industry roundtable discussion. It's been quite some time since everyone's gotten together at the national meetings. So the NACOR essentially took lead and invited educators, associations, this time industry, which is new, and associations. So pretty much all the corners of the profession were covered across the country. So there was over 60 attendees from major industry, including Loblaws, Costco, FYI Doctors, Luxottica, Hakeem. The schools were there, the associations were there, all the regulators were there. And we had a facilitated day. Actually, Sarah was our facilitator for the day. And we spoke about different challenges, perceived shortages in opticians supply, challenges with mentors, things like that. So we had a really good discussion over the day. And so I think it was good to get everybody to the table. Our college had a big part in organizing this along with the NACOR office. And I think it was a really worthwhile day. The attendees had, I think, a good time, and everybody enjoyed the collaborative opportunity to meet. I just thought I'd point that out as an important outcome of the latest NACOR meetings. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions from folks? Go ahead, Jarina.
So I'm curious about this NACOR meeting where you participated, Fazal. What was the conclusion about the shortage of
opticians
and entry to practice or willingness to become an optician, or all the factors that influence the profession as it is right now, from the perspective of what is the environment about? Because it seems few willing people to get into schools, and the most population in schools is international, really. So
there, so definitely we talked about the fact that there were so many things to talk about with so many people. So it started the conversation going and narrowed some of the major concerns, but definitely we didn't solve everything in one sitting. And we agreed that that we all thought it was important for us to collaborate, finish that conversation and collaborate continually with all those same players. So major things like the mentorship issue and a perceived shortage of opticians was a discussion. I'm saying perceived because we don't have data. And I think a big thing that came out of this meeting was that all four groups probably need to be collecting certain data and then sharing it so that we have all the numbers of how many students are entering, how many people are being registered, what is the demand from employers, and then do the math and figure out, is there a shortage or not? Because the other piece of it is also factoring, is the public feeling a pinch as far as access to registrants, or is it just that businesses are expanding so quickly that they can't find people? So we haven't come to any conclusions. It was quite a lot of conversation, but we're probably going to be meeting up with the group in the next 6 months or so at the next set of national meetings and continue that conversation.
Thank you, Fazal. Henry, I'm going to give you the last question.
I just want to say, I think it's great working with NACOR, and kudos to the team and you, Fazal, with taking some leadership with NACOR to get this going, because I think this is really, really important.
Thanks, Henry. It was a really excellent day, and you know what, Stephen and Netta were there as part of the board representative, and I think it was a good conversation having everybody at the table.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will pass to Stephen to lead us through the reports package.
Thanks, Sarah. And this, the reports that are in the package, and this is a consent agenda item and will be approved as an omnibus bill. So does anyone have any questions or concerns with regards to the committee reports or any reports? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So then I would like to seek call for a motion to approve the committee reports, communication report, and exams report, and NACOR report as presented. Do I have a mover?
Amber,
Amber,
Amber, second.
Derek,
Derek,
Derek.
all in favor? Anyone against? Motion carries.
Okay, so then Stephen, we'll leave it with you to just take us quickly through the board self-evaluations. Oh, Fazal, did you have a point?
I mean, I'm going to jump in before we adjourn the meeting, but I'll let Steve get us to the adjournment.
Sure.
Okay. So it's that time of year again, and the 2022 board and committee self-assessment evaluations are here tomorrow afternoon today. After the meeting today, all board and committee members will receive an email on how to connect and complete the online questionnaire. You'll be getting one email for the board and one email for every committee you sit on. The survey will be open for 2 weeks and closing at 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, December the 20th, 2022. The questionnaire covers the period from January the 1st, 22 to December the 6th, 22. It will take approximately 30 minutes to complete, depending if you sat on a board or how many committees you participated in. As always, participation in this process is, and I'll use the word, mandatory. So we ask that all directors and committee members, including those ending the term this year, take part, as it will allow for a fair and balanced evaluation of performance and effectiveness as a college. Directors and members not responding will receive 2 reminders. If there continues to be no response, I, as board chair, will be reaching out to you personally and directly. If anyone requires any tech or logistics support, you can always reach out to the college for assistance. All responses are anonymous. They will be collated and analyzed to provide separate reports, one for the board, one for each committee. The board will receive a full report at its March 2023 board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So Fazal, we will pass to you then.
All right, just have to unmute. If I can, I would like to add one item to the agenda, which is an in-camera item, which would be a personnel item requiring us to go into camera. And if the board acquiesces, I'll suggest that we end the streaming because when we come out of camera, the meeting will be essentially over. And so there won't be any point for the public to hang on to onto the stream.
Okay, is the board okay with that? We'll maybe do a show of consensus. Okay, looks as though they are. We will have to do a motion, of course, to go in camera. Did you want to do that now, Fazal?
Yeah, if we could, the motion, Steve, will actually be the same as at the beginning of yesterday's meeting.
Sure. And I would ask for a motion then to go in camera to discuss a personnel or a personnel item or any.
Henry?
Thank you, Henry. Seconder?
Mike.
Mike, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion carries.